Here's the script. There is a fund called the Contingent Fund of the Senate. No floor vote approves what comes out of it. No senator stands up and says yes or no. The rule that governs every payment was written on October 2, 1888, Chapter 1069, 25 Statute 546, and it is still the law today. One committee signs off. That's the entire process. That's the whole vote you were never invited to. Here's what it actually is in plain terms. Every year, Congress passes an appropriations bill that funds its own operations: salaries, buildings, printing, travel. Buried inside that bill is a line that replenishes the Senate's contingent fund, a reserve account the chamber draws from for expenses that don't fit anywhere else. Investigations, outside counsel, equipment, emergency needs a committee decides it has. It sounds like a rounding error in a giant budget. It isn't. It's a standing account that exists independent of any single appropriation, refilled on a schedule, spent under rules almost no one outside the Capitol has read. It didn't start as a secret. In the earliest Congresses, the Senate simply set aside money for miscellaneous costs and let the Secretary of the Senate hand it out. But as the government grew, so did the appetite for a mechanism with fewer checkpoints. By 1888, Congress didn't put the fund up for a fresh vote. It quietly rewrote the rule for who could authorize a payment. Instead of requiring the full Senate to approve each expenditure, the new statute handed that power to a single body, the Committee on Rules and Administration. One committee, not 100 senators. 100 people delegated their check-writing authority to a handful of colleagues, and they did it through statutory language, not headlines. That's where the story turns, because delegation is not the same as neutrality. The Committee on Rules and Administration is small. It's chaired by a senator from the majority party, and it operates largely outside public floor debate. When that committee sanctions a payment, the fund releases it. There is no requirement that the payment be broken down for the public in the way an appropriations line item would be. You can find the aggregate. You will rarely find the itemized reason. The chamber that answers to 50 state electorates handed its checkbook to roughly 20 people, and the transfer happened so long ago that almost no sitting senator was there to vote on it, because none of them were. Now here's what that means for you specifically. When a special Senate committee needs to hire an outside attorney, subpoena bank records, fly in a witness, or cover a cost that Congress never anticipated when it wrote the annual budget, this is frequently where that money originates, not from a new bill you'd hear about, but from an account that was already sitting there waiting to be tapped. Remember, no one voted for this. Not the money, not the committee's authority over it, not the specific dollars spent on a given investigation into a given official, a given company, a given controversy that later became a news story you watched unfold. You saw the hearing. You didn't see the fun behind it. And here's the part that should actually worry you: it's completely legal. Every dollar traces back to that 1888 statute, still on the books, never amended in a way that restored floor authority. The fund doesn't hide. It doesn't need to. It was built to not require your attention in the first place. You cannot repeal this the way you'd repeal an ordinary law, because it isn't sitting out in the open as its own bill. It's a rider renewed inside a must-pass Appropriations Act every single year. Killing it would mean either the Senate voting to defund its own operations, which no chamber does to itself, or a floor fight over a few obscure lines inside a 1,000-page spending package that almost no one reads in full. There is no campaign platform built around repeal the contingent fund. There is no opponent to run against. The lock isn't secrecy. The lock is that undoing it requires the very body that benefits from it to vote against its own convenience, year after year, forever. And once you see this pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. How many other committees hold spending authority that never touches the Senate floor? How many funds renew themselves inside bills too large to read, protected not by law but by procedural exhaustion? The contingent fund isn't unique because it's uniquely hidden. It's unique because it's one of the few examples where the paper trail is old enough and public enough to actually prove the pattern exists. So ask yourself who currently sits on the Committee on Rules and Administration. Ask what they authorized last month. Then ask how many other committees in how many other chambers are doing exactly the same thing right now, with no fund old enough yet for anyone to have noticed. Sources: 2 U.S. Code Section 6503, Payments from Senate Contingent Fund. 2 U.S.C. 6503, Payments from Senate Contingent Fund. Word count is 908 within your 900-word target. Let me know if you want it tightened for an actual shorts length cut. The title says shorts, but this runs closer to a 6-minute narration at this length.